So good morning. Good morning. Thanks for being here. And I want to introduce to you Mark Schwab, producer, director, and I forgot, Mark is wearing his t-shirt. Can you show us your t-shirt?
Yeah, there I am. There is.
So that's the t-shirt for the production company, right?
Yeah, that's the
okay. But there's also the diamond in the Rough Film Festival.
Well, not. I mean, obviously, COVID stopped all that. But I will say there's some very. I just got one of these Oculus Quest headsets.
Yes.
And they are phenomenal. I mean, the idea that you can now be completely, it's a holodeck. I mean, you're in a movie theater. It looks totally convincing. And you can, you could do a film festival easily now, being in a theater without
a great idea.
Needing to leave your home. Well, you just need one of the headsets, or you need a VR headset.
Yes.
It can be done now, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah. I love it. So, but I know I don't do much any of an introduction here, and we put the bio everywhere so people know, but you're a director, you're a writer, you're a producer, and you run a film festival. So I think that's,
for 4 years I did. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. So, I want to start with, I hope you have your tea ready or whatever. I'm drinking my decaf coffee. My first question always is, when did you first know, Mark, that you were going to be a film producer? I mean, a filmmaker. Let's just use that term.
As a filmmaker, I would say high school. My friends, I had a group of friends. I had done acting on stage. I had been one of those little, theater guys for a bit. It was a weird combo, theater and playing sports. I was kind of doing both.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. But then
did you play?
What?
What
Soccer, but also golf. I played golf in high school and college and stuff. So I wanted to be a little pro golfer for a while. But definitely filmmaking became an obsession. Actually, the very first film I ever did in 1987 that starred my current producing partner, Mark Valunas, who's one of the co-owners of this. But we made this movie called The Hunted. It was on a VHS camcorder, and we shot all day in 105-degree weather, and we didn't care. It was so much fun. And at the end of this thing, we made this 22-minute shaky cam, horror film, and we thought it was a masterpiece when we finished it. We just thought it was the greatest thing in the world. And after that, we made films all the time for a year and a half, all through my high school years. We, instead of, going out and getting drunk somewhere or something, we'd make a movie. I mean, that's what we got really into. And so we made all these films. In fact, it's interesting you mentioned that, because I got a transfer system where I'm transferring those old films from VHS. Really? I found them, and I'm transferring them over. I'm digitizing them for the first time. It's really interesting going over them. So that was definitely high school. That's all I thought about was how to make films. And so we shot on Super 8mm for a while. We did, I've kind of gone through all of the mediums that you could possibly do. So yeah, high school. I would say that.
Fantastic. And then when did you start the film festival?
I started the film festival in 2015 was the first time I did it. It was a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, who just a great guy, and he loves movies also. And he said, you should do a film festival, because I was complaining that I just found film festivals very political. I have a lot of thoughts around film festivals, but
me too.
I didn't see what I saw, kind of a hole in the market. First of all, just here in San Jose in the South Bay, we have Cinequest, but nothing else. So I thought there's room for another one. And also Cinequest had gotten very big.
Yes.
And a lot of really independent films would have no chance getting in there at all. So I wanted to really identify those. And I really wanted to expand and encourage filmmakers. Like, just because they didn't shoot on a red doesn't mean it wasn't worth projecting on a screen. And so that was kind of the impetus of that. And so our LLC, our production company, kind of sponsored it and began. And it was a really interesting experience, that's for sure. I wouldn't say it, and I don't believe, like, for example, it's weird. So like film festivals, I know, need to sustain themselves, but I don't think they should be making lots of money off it. I never believed in that. I didn't want to use the film festival to like make money. None of us did at Diamond and Rough Films. So, and we were very successful in that. We did not make a lot of money,
Good job.
but at least we did. But we didn't lose much. We didn't lose much, and I think we did really good work for 4 years. I think we did. But it is a lot of work.
You're not going to do it anymore?
I don't know. I mean, the problem, of course, right now, who knows about anything? I mean,
Yeah.
I would definitely, honestly, I mean, with this new Oculus stuff, I would absolutely probably arrange to do something. But
When
the problem
you say
here,
Oculus stuff, you mean
yeah,
VR
a
360?
VR, yeah, where you have a VR headset, you put it on, and you could virtually attend a festival in a
Yes.
theater, literally.
It's just interesting. It's a little bit like hearing somebody talk about a vacuum cleaner, but talking about Hoover. Right?
Yeah,
I've never.
exactly.
I'm a big VR fan, but I've never heard anybody talk about just the way you just said it. So I just wanted to clarify.
Interesting.
So,
yeah, I mean, that I could see, but I don't think I would ever do it again. Just trying to rent an event space is difficult. All the infrastructure, I mean, it's today especially, I mean, but even the last year or so, I mean, just getting people to get out of their house to go down, sit in a theater. I mean, it's a lot of work. And especially if it's a lot of work, if you don't have a sponsor that is paying for it all. I mean, I know how to do the work. Okay. But it's just the startup costs are just brutal. And,
and the thing
so,
is,
I don't know.
And you said already that your goal was not to make money.
No, not particularly. We wanted to do it for filmmakers. We wanted to get, I mean, one thing, this reminds me, one thing we really wanted to do is seeing your film on a larger screen is a different experience from watching it online.
With an audience.
With an audience, yeah, it's different. Yeah. It's just a different way of connecting with your medium and with your creative output. And we wanted to give filmmakers that opportunity. And they were all very appreciative of that. So we wanted to give them a little press. We wanted to give them that experience a bit, because one of the gripes I have about bigger film festivals, of course, is they don't pick the best product. They pick the product that will sell. My whole thing is, they'll pick the mediocre Jennifer Aniston movie over the great Mark Schwab film because Jennifer Aniston will draw people. Right. And I get that. I mean, you got to sell seats. So,
and I hope, you know what, I'm going to just clarify this with everybody. So Mark is my client or former client, although none of my clients ever are really my former clients. But so I really know him very well. And I just want to say in here that I was at the Diamond in the Rough Film Festival one time. I had the pleasure of attending. And it felt to me very different from most events that we call film festivals. And as Mark was saying, he has opinions, I have opinions. My big opinion is simply that film festivals are in the business of selling tickets. Mm-hmm. They're not in the business of helping filmmakers. So the fact that you had a film festival that was in the business of helping filmmakers is what makes it very unusual. And it had that very welcoming community, inclusive, educational kind of feel to it. And the only other film festival I know like that is Slamdance, which is also my client.
I've heard that.
Yeah, you would love Slamdance, Mark. You would love it. You would love it.
Oh, I'm sure I would.
We're not going this year, so
next year.
I mean, not 2021, 2022. We're going to go. So by the time you started the film festival, then you already had your production company. And what were you focusing on with your production company? What were you making?
Well, when we originally formed it, we formed the LLC in late 2012 is my guess. formally drafted up all the papers and stuff. And we originally formed it for the creation of this feature film we did called SERP, which is S period, E period, R period, P period, SERP, which stands for Search Engine Results Page. And we wanted to, it was based on a play that one of our producers had acted in, actually. And so we bought the option. We met with the playwright. I told him what I wanted to do as a movie. He liked it. He adapted it into a screenplay. And we, did the option, did all of that. And we made the movie. And this is back in 2012. Yeah, 2012. We shot the film. We finished it in 2013. We shot that movie for just about $2,000 is what we did, just a little under that. And we actually got a distributor for it, which was kind of strange. Now, I say distributor in the loosest sense of the term. Yeah. I don't think they exist anymore. They were, but it was still worth going through that legally as far as understanding, signing contracts and doing all that. So that's when it started. Once we did that, we did a feature-length documentary.
Oh, before you move off of SERP, what I love about that story is that even though it was your first film and even though your budget was $2,000, you did everything in a totally professional way. You went to work with a playwright, you optioned the play, you got him to write the screenplay. Yes.
Yeah, we did everything by the book on that. That's for sure. And we learned a lot from that, of course. It wasn't my very first feature film, but it was the first film under Diamond and Rough Films, you can say.
Right, okay.
And then we did a feature-length documentary, which did some film festivals, did that. Now that one, we distributed ourselves, so to speak. It's on Vimeo on demand. That was called The Ambassador of God. We did that. And then we decided that this is where you come in, Joanne, because when this is about probably February of 2017, and in the production company, we did other things. We did some corporate videos, we did a music video, lots of little stuff, short films as well, which went into festivals and things like that. But then in February of 2017, and this is where I'm really glad to bring Joanne into this, because this is where things really changed, was when I was frustrated. Things weren't moving as quick as I'd wanted them to. And out of just pure what the heckism, I found Joanne's talk in San Francisco. Silicon Valley and Independent Filmmaking or something it was called. It was, it had Silicon Valley in the title.
Yes, it did. And we were looking at the connection between data science and film.
That's right. And I went up there and I introduced myself to you, Joanne, and gave her my card and stuff. And you got back to me the next day, which really impressed me. I want to tell that's something that's really important, everybody. If you're really genuinely interested in working with somebody, get back to them right away, even if it's just a note, even if it's just an email. That impressed me. I mean, that showed, oh, she's serious, that she actually wants to work, And so then we talked, and one thing you said, Joanne, which I'll never forget, is you said, Mark, I looked, because we had a website and stuff, and Joanne checked it out and said, Mark, you should not be doing short films anymore. You should be doing feature films. You should be doing more. And that's when Joanne kind of challenged us, because then you met with Mark and I. Mark and I came up to your place, and you said, if you can get if you can make a feature film by this date, by the end, and this was, now we're talking May. At this point.
May, yeah. May. I think we were already in June.
Right before June. It was right before that. So we're in May, and Joanne says, Mark, if you guys can put a rough cut of a feature film together by September 30th, there might be an opportunity for you. And we had no script, no nothing as of late May. And I talked to there were three of us back then. And I said, guys, if we're really going to do this, we got to do it for real. That means we got to take a risk. We got to spend some money. and make it happen. And it was one of the biggest challenges we had ever attempted.
That's right.
And it worked. And working with Joanne, and her encouragement was hugely important. Your encouragement was hugely important. And I think if I had looked back, here's what another lesson I would tell all of you. This is where ignorance was bliss. I didn't realize just how difficult this would be to actually pull it off. And the fact that we did, it gave us a tremendous amount of confidence. It really did. But it was crazy. It was really, so from blank page to rough cut, blank page. I started writing the script on June 1st to Crisis Hotline, what is now Crisis Hotline. And we had a rough cut by September 30th with nothing. I mean, we started from scratch and we did it. And so that was a real
no money.
What?
No script, no money.
Well, we did have a little bit. I mean, me and the other business partners were ready to invest a certain amount, which, believe me, was not much. Let me tell you, it's not much. But it did prove to be enough. And if you look at the
and when you say enough, nowadays, now when you think about yourself as a filmmaker now and then before, what was enough? Because I think that your goals were completely changed.
You're absolutely right. Actually, that's another really, really good point you bring up, because when we decided we were going to do this, when Joanne totally talked us into this to actually do it, we had 3 goals. 1, to shoot in 4K, like on a Red or an Alexa. 2, to get a really good cinematographer, like the absolute best cinematographer we could get. And 3 was get an actual distributor, not like distributing ourselves and not like just some aggregator. I mean, someone that actually distributes and does it worldwide. Those were the 3 goals. And we hit them all. We hit them all with Crisis Hotline. And so nowadays, you're right, the goals have shifted. And they continue to shift, and they shifted again once the pandemic hit. We're working on, there's 3 different projects we're kind of gestating, you could say, in the Borg maturation chamber, for lack of a better word. And now our goals are, they're different for each project. We have 1 goal for the Lustrine experiment. We have 1 goal for a new project called the Fraser Brothers, and then another goal for a project called Ergosphere. And so they're all separate.
And how do you define, that's really interesting to me, that you have 3 different projects, but you have different goals for each project.
Yeah.
How do you define the goals for each project, and how do you come to that?
Another good question. Okay, so with the Lustrine experiment is, I guess you could say, our tentpole property, which is it's a sci-fi thriller about lucid dreaming, and it's expensive, you could say. Like, it's not something we can cobble together. It's a 7-figure budget film to do it correctly, in our opinion. And it's a script that we've had actual meetings in Hollywood with it. It's kind of like, the goal for that is, we're not going to give it away. We're either going to do it right, or we would be open to selling it, the screenplay. I mean, if it actually, we're supposed to find out if it's a finalist tomorrow for Stage 32.
Oh,
and yeah, I mean, if a production company came in and said, we'll offer you X, and if X is what we want, yeah, we'll sell it outright. But it's a bigger step. That's what that is. And we're not, like I said, we're not going to do that film for $30,000. That we're going to be paid for it because it's ambitious and there's a lot of work to it. The Fraser Brothers is a fairly new screenplay. It's let's call it a COVID screenplay, as in it's something that can be done for very little money. It's 1 location. It's a very small crew that would need to make it. The Fraser Brothers we're innovating a new way to make a feature film, actually using certain equipment that requires almost no one to make it, as far as behind the scenes, and yet it looks like $1 million. And we've gotten pretty far with that. That's where my husband is very, very helpful, because he's a software engineer. He's really gotten into all of this.
And
So,
he's a sound engineer as well, isn't he?
yeah, he was a music engineer. Yeah.
Ah.
So he's like, that's the first thing we solved, is now we've got a way.
Can I say it's very handy to
not
be
just handy,
married to a sound.
critical. Oh my God. But like, for example, on the Fraser Brothers, we did an experiment with certain microphones for it to go directly into the camera, so you don't need to sync any of the audio, and it's perfect. That just wipes out tons of complexity. So that's what that one is. That's an in-house, we control everything, we're in charge. Then Ergosphere is kind of in the middle. Ergosphere is, we're still kind of developing the script a little bit, we're tweaking it. It's not as expensive as Lucidrin, but it's more expensive than the Fraser Brothers. And that's one that we could make that for like 50, 60 grand pretty easily. And it would look and sound perfect. So it's kind of those three. So each one, we want them to be, they're designed to be, here's what it is. We decide what the end game is for each project before we really go into it.
Yes, and those are completely different, and that was great that you explained it like that, because I find that
it makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, well, it made sense to me, but I also feel as though sometimes I need to translate for filmmakers. So the thing is that if you can make something for $50,000, I think was the number you just threw out, then you have total control. Once you start saying, I need, this is a 7-figure project, now you have to go out and basically persuade people, convince people that you have a project, or you have to package the project enough, and now you don't have total control.
It's much more complex at that level, but not any less interesting, I'll admit. I mean, you do a whole other set of skills with that.
Yeah.
It's still worth doing, I would say. It's still a good education to try and go down that road. As difficult as it is, it's worth doing. I've learned a lot doing that, even though, we're not close to making that film yet. It could turn overnight, who knows? But that journey with that, just the writing of it, that's the most work I've ever done as a screenwriter, was on the Lucidrin experiment, because not only has it gone through a lot of drafts, but we actually worked with a Hollywood script doctor, which was an incredible experience. I mean, we really lucked out being able to work with him, because he just basically gave us a master class in screenwriting, essentially, and we were able to work one-on-one with him, and he got us to write. He got us to write better than we've ever written, no question about it.
Nice. And that, of course, translates to anything you write, all of that learning.
In a way, I mean, he was very upfront. He was like, look, we're going to work on making this a sellable Hollywood project. Like, it's got to pass coverage. And you could look at it as compromises. There are things you've got to do that are specific to get it to pass coverage. Things that maybe I personally might not have gone down that road, but it's good to know what that road looks like.
Yes.
And it's good to know I understand much more about what Hollywood, for lack of a better word, is looking for, and how a script can pass coverage. And it was very, and I follow things pretty well. I read a lot of articles. I try and keep up, and it was still very different than what I thought. I learned a lot about, I had certain things in my head about what Hollywood wants and how they read it. And now I'm clearer. It's a little different.
Also, I want to go back to the $50,000 project. So when we talk about $50,000, we don't mean $50,000 for the whole, okay, I'm not saying it very well. So what we're talking about here, this is Mark and I talking like amongst ourselves. So $50,000 means to us $50,000 cash.
Yes, I would say that, yes.
The budget of the film and the value of the film are different issues. So if we were not talking just amongst ourselves, what would you call the budget of the film?
Of Crisis Hotline?
of the $50,000 film that you were just mentioning that you were going to make?
Uh, oh boy, that's a little tough only because I don't have all the post-production roles decided yet on that one. But if it went similar to Crisis Hotline, let's say
Right.
you kind of went that route,
Yeah.
that film would easily be worth 250,000 probably.
Right.
Easily.
So,
Yeah.
so the point I'm basically bringing up is that amongst ourselves, we talk about the cash budget, the $50,000 cash that you would need to raise for that. But the film in terms of the rest of the world, we would call it a $250,000 budget. And we're not liars. We're not making this up. It's just that, I mean, for you, Mark, I always think, with the Crisis Hotline, the fact that you were able to do all of the editing in-house from the beginning to passing QA for the distributor.
Yep.
And as I said, anybody, wants to get on well with filmmaking, marry a sound engineer. But
well, I ended up doing it. Yeah, I ended up doing it. And that's I would put that out there to everybody. Sound mixing is, I would say, literally the most important thing to pass QA with. When I started it, I didn't think I could pull it off. I had never professionally sound mixed a movie before.
Right.
And even though, yes, my husband is an expert at that, he did show me the basics of using Logic Pro and stuff. He encouraged me to learn it. He didn't just bail me out. He said, here's some YouTube videos, literally YouTube videos. You can do this. He said, I know you can do this. And he was right. And I did. And so you really can do it. If you understand nonlinear editing, at least picture cutting, you can get sound mixing. You can. And I would encourage you to learn it because it became very fun, actually. I really enjoyed doing that part of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, so back to this topic of the $50,000. So the $50,000 cash on the one hand, but then to that the entire value of that post-production that your team was able to bring to the table is worth, I don't know, another $100,000 or something.
Oh, easy. Yeah. When you figure color correcting and mixing and picture cutting and
right.
Yeah, and also doing all the deliverables, that takes a lot of time too. So yeah, when you figure all that, and then the marketing, it adds up real quick.
So when we are talking about making a $250,000 film, but we're talking about having to raise something like $50,000 to get there. And Mark has, really advanced filmmaker skills. So he's able to bring more to the table with his producer hat on. He's able to bring more to the table than a lot of filmmakers, but that's how it works. But the producer is the one that's bringing the resources to the table, and that's how we get to that 250K number. As I said, it's not because we're liars. It's not that we're making it up.
No, absolutely not. And in fact, our not only our distributor, but other folks that regarding the Lucian experiment, they all want, the Hollywood people really want to look at Crisis Hotline because they kind of, we talk about valuating actors and actors, right? Like, Hayden Christensen is worth $300,000 in these foreign markets, right? Well, I found out they do the same thing with directors actually. And based on like a studio or a good sized Hollywood production house will evaluate me. They'll say, okay, how much of a budget can we trust this person with, right? Mm-hmm. And they basically would trust me. What the feedback I've been getting is I'm worth about 1.3 million. Like I could, like a 1.3 million budget, most production companies would say, no problem. We can trust him to make that movie. And it was based on, Crisis Hotline, which most people thought was about $400,000 to $500,000, which kind of shocks me that they thought it was worth that. Honestly, it really does. And also they look at the reviews of the film and they look at the distribution of the film. They're like, okay, based on that, this director can be trusted with this amount of money. And this is where a lot of independent filmmakers get very, I'll just say it, they get really delusional. They have no feature film credits and they think they're going to get $500,000 or $1 million to make a movie. It just will not happen. They will not do it because, in fact, a lot of production houses nowadays won't even look at funding a filmmaker or working with them if they have no feature film credits. I was amazed what a distributed feature film, the doors that can open, especially if it's decent, can do quite a bit. Yeah. So what I try and tell filmmakers,
all I can say is I didn't pay Mark to say any of this, but it's so fundamental to everything that I believe. I'm just like, just raise a bit of money, make a feature film next, because nobody needs to hear from you until you have a feature film under your belt.
Well, that's definitely one thing. The other thing that filmmakers make a big mistake on, that I have seen now over the past 3 years, is they think they're going to make an independent feature film like the way we did Crisis Hotline. Say they're going to make it like that, and they're going to make a lot of money. You will not. You will not. You will not make anything. I will tell you that. What you make a film like that to make the next film is what you do. It is not there to make you money. It just isn't. And they, no matter how many times I try and tell people that, they don't seem to get that. And then they're in debt. Then they've got 2 mortgages on their house. They're in credit card debt. I see it over and over again. And you've got to understand how the business works at that level. They have value. These films do have a lot of value, but they are not monetary value.
Well, I think also that, you know, the film that, you know, gets into Sundance and all of that stuff, which is fantastic, you know, those are the ones that we get to read about. Those are the success stories of what we get to read about, you know, and I love to talk about, you know, this film that I really liked at Sundance one year, and everybody else hated it. I mean, Sundance, every screening you go to is sold out, you know, and I went to a screening there and it was only half full because the word was already out that people didn't like the film. And those, you know, I feel as though I learned a lesson from those filmmakers that I will never forget. Because
yeah, I mean, also those films that are winning at Sundance, those are not $50,000 movies.
No, they're not.
I mean, they're not. They're films with name actors in them and stars, and it's a whole different world. It's not 1992 anymore, which is what some filmmakers are still stuck with because they read Easy Riders, Raising Bulls, or Down and Dirty Pictures when they read about Kevin Smith and they read about, you know, Quentin Tarantino and the Duplass brothers and stuff, and that's a whole different time that does not exist anymore.
Well, I would also say it's what I call the anomalies, and I think it's great to aspire to be an anomaly, but the fact is that there is a business which occurs whether you're an anomaly or not. You know, there's
very good point.
that occurs whether you are, you know, making it big time or not, and so. To me, there's no reason, like another thing that I see a lot of filmmakers do is they're waiting to be that anomaly instead of, well, what are we waiting for? Let's go now, you know, let's make the film now and get going and get to the point where you can take those meetings in Hollywood if you wish to, because the door is opened to you by the fact that you have a feature film in distribution.
It helps a lot. Well, and the good reviews help too. I mean, that really helps too. So yeah, but that has proved to be a big difference.
So actually, let me talk about the reviews thing because I was curious about this. So you finished the film, you got distribution, and the distributor had a publicist. Is that right?
They did.
Okay. So what was that experience like? What was the experience of marketing your film like? Was it that you sort of said, okay, here, distributor, you go do it?
Okay, well, contractually, they had, you know, a lot of power. They, like, the first thing they did, which I didn't like, but I had to accept it, was they changed the title. The original title of the film was called Shadows in Mind, and that title was specifically chosen. Crisis Hotline Shadows in Mind it's a LGBT psychosexual thriller, very much in the vein of kind of like an Eyes Wide Shut. And High Octane Pictures, who's our distributor, they decided to market it as a slasher film, which, okay. And
no slashing in the film.
No, but they came up with a very provocative poster, which again is all in their contract. I mean, they changed the title to Crisis Hotline. Originally, they said they changed it to that because it translated better to foreign markets than Shadows in Mind. And they did, like I said, a very provocative poster, very professionally done. They then hired a publicity firm. And at first, when they released it on all the streaming platforms, I got a lot of inquiries about doing a lot of online interviews, which I did those. Got some reviews, but the problem was it got hit up by a bunch of horror sites. Horror sites started reviewing it at first. And of course, what were they? They were disappointed because it's not a gorehound movie. It's not a knife movie, as John Carpenter might say. And so they're like, well, this isn't horrific. Well, of course it's not horrific. I mean, the ideas behind it, the situation is horrific, but it's not a bloody guts film. And so at first I was kind of like, the reviews were middling because nobody said it was a bad movie. They just said it's not thrilling, it's not scary in that way. And so then I kind of took it on myself to start pushing it more into the LGBT market and started contacting other sites and that started generating much better reviews. And then we got, so I would say it was okay. I wouldn't say it was great.
When you took that on, because I always was clear that there was a way to market the film to LGBT audiences, and it's a market that it's a niche, and so it's much easier to get some traction and get some interest behind. So you handled that entirely yourself, and did you do it sort of locally in the Bay Area, or how did you actually do that?
It's been a little while. Locally it was really tough. And I have some, I went on KGO 810. I went on Pat Thurston's show and I got to talk for an hour about the film, which was fantastic. That's where my friend Tim Sika was incredibly helpful.
Right.
In fact, I couldn't have done 80% of what I did without Tim's help, because Tim's an expert at that. And plus he's a fan. He's a great guy. He's a superb person.
He's not a publicist though, is he?
He's not a publicist. He understands how to be a publicist, so to speak, but he's a radio talk show host, in a way. He also hosts Cellular Dreams, and he's worked on movies too, in various roles. And he was one of the co-producers of, he was my production coordinator for Crisis Hotline and did a fantastic job.
Yes.
And so I did take that on, but I didn't have much luck locally. I tried to let them know, hey, check this out. And the problem was too, I learned, because I entered it into about 13 LGBT festivals around the United States. And they were various ones, from Frameline, big one in SF, to, the Wicked Queer Festival in Boston, and got rejected across the board, which no one can understand that. I talked to Chris Gore of Film Threat directly. I was on his podcast, and he says, I can't believe this didn't get into one of them. Right. But then but then I now that I've had some time on it, I see why it didn't, because it's a disturbing film. It's not a coming out story. It's not a romance story, really. It's not about, it doesn't have a political agenda. It's a thriller. And I think they had no idea what to do with it, is what it was. And the film festival just didn't get it.
It's interesting. A couple of weeks ago, I had Josh Davidsburg and Muffy Blake Stevens on, and they have a documentary, Queen of the Capitol, which looks at the drag community in Washington, D.C. And all of the drag community's work, fundraising, and things like that. And they also got some strange sort of rejections. They were told the film wasn't gay enough. Like, what is not gay enough? And then the other thing was, well, Muffy felt that because it didn't have the kind of bitchy drag content, that it wasn't what people wanted to see. But it's just very, very interesting. And Crisis Hotline, I hope you'll go and watch it and you'll get an idea of what can be done with a very tiny amount of cash and a well-written script. But also it's interesting when, you know, we started out the conversation talking about festivals. And so what is it that festivals are looking for? And we don't know, you know, we don't know. The fact is that there's a very small world of programmers who all speak to each other and refer different films to each other. And that's how it works. And
they're pretty political. They're very political.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Yeah. One other thing about the marketing, did I remember that somewhere along the line the film got onto an LGBT streaming service? Did that?
Yes, actually, yeah. It's on Here TV and on Deku
and
Deku.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I mean, I got it on Deku basically. I mean, I got to talk to the one of the founders, and he was great. He really liked the movie, luckily. And now, anytime that when I say I got it on, I contacted them, but I always I connect them with High Octane Pictures, of course. I mean, you know, I don't negotiate that deal. I'm not allowed to do that. So, you know, I always connect them. But now High Octane hopefully is wanting to go more in that direction. I think they're actually talking about repackaging it, you know, even using the original title again. After I talked to the CEO not that long ago, and they are, you know, because that was why they originally took it on, because when they approached us, I didn't find them, they came to me. And I said, you know, looking at their library, I said, you know, you put out a lot of stuff. I mean, you're pretty good size, but why this film? This is very different from what you normally do. And they said, well, we like it because it's different. We want to up our game, so to speak. We want to do more high-end product, more, it's funny, high-end, and I had the lowest budget film, I think, in all their films. And they said, we want to actually use your film to start what's called High Octane Select, which is kind of like a more, you know, like a Warner Classics or something. And I thought, wow, that's cool. And then they didn't do that, unfortunately. They kind of went their standard route, which they're entitled to do. I mean, if they thought that was best, I'm going to take them at their word for it. But, you know, it doesn't seem to have translated into that. And I'm hoping that they're going to go back and do it the way that I think might work much better, which is selling it as kind of like a gay Eyes Wide Shut, you know, which is what they did.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I had a meeting with one of my clients at AFM last year with High Octane Pictures, and they, you know, we were there with a thriller, and they pitched us exactly, like, word for word, the pitch that they made to you about, we're going with High Octane Select, and it's going to do this and it's going to do that. And I have to say, I didn't believe them.
I wouldn't. Yeah, well, yeah, it's an interesting experience, which that's what I'm writing a book about. So,
oh yeah, oh cool, very
detailing all of that kind of.
Very, very nice. Yes.
Well, we'll see how nice it is. But at least it's true. I mean, let's put it that way. At least it'll be true.
So I'd like to open it up for questions. If you could come on video and ask your question, that would be really great. And I will call on people if you don't.
I see a couple in the chat here. Do you want me to answer these? There are a couple here in the chat.
Joe just came on, and Yanni's going to ask a question as well. So jump in, Joe first, and then Yanni.
Morning, Mark.
Morning.
So I was curious, going back, you said that you were forced to rewrite your script so that it would pass coverage. What kind of things did you have to do that you didn't like the changes?
This is for the film. This
the
is
Lucidrin experiment, yeah,
which hasn't been made yet. So
yeah.
Just to clarify.
Yeah, I would say not necessarily things I didn't like, but for example, one thing that they're very, very picky about is when you first introduce a character into your story, it has to be snappy. Like you can't just say lawyer, female, 30s or something. It's got to have some kind of zip to it. Like, you know, female lawyer, cross between Angelina Jolie and, you know, Captain Janeway or something. You know, it's got to have some kind of marketing hook for every decent sized character that you do.
You're talking
That
about
was kind
the
of
writing of the script and the way it reads on the page, not your story structure or the way the characters are actually developed. You're talking about writing a script so people will be excited reading it.
Oh, I will say this. There was one other thing that's really important. You hear it all the time, you know, the first 10 pages are vital. That is true. They really want almost the entire structure kind of in the first 10 pages. It's like everything's got to be laid out. They don't want anything to build. You know, it's like you can't sit there and build to all this dread or suspense or whatever. It's got to be right up front in the first 10 pages, kind of, as far as the structure, if that's what you're asking. So that I don't like to just laugh at, you know, everything. I like to kind of unpeel the onion as a writer as far as stories I like. And that doesn't work in Hollywood at all. They are not interested in that.
Well,
Did that answer your question?
Somewhat.
Okay.
There's a follow-up then, because what I'm sensing is, you know, the disconnect between what you wrote and the way Crisis Hotline was marketed. My question had been like, are you saying that we should just try to be as commercial as possible in our first movie because that's the way they're going to try to sell it? Or do you think it's better to try and be personal and get your style across?
Totally good question. No, Crisis Hotline was very different than Lucidrin in that Crisis Hotline was a story that we had full control over that. I told it the way I wanted to. Joanne had some really good tips, by the way, at the beginning, which really helped the script. But no, I wouldn't say make it as commercially as possible, especially if you're making it, because you're not going to make something commercial for 50 grand or less. You're just not. Mm-hmm. That's another thing to get that illusion out of your head. You're not going to be able to make anything commercial for that. So definitely make something that you want to make and that you really like, because you're going to spend a year on it, no matter what. You really are. You're going to spend a year making a feature film from start to finish. It's going to be a year. And you don't want to spend a year of something that you're not interested in, and especially one that you're not going to make a ton of money from. Mm-hmm. So I would say, no, make it personal. And I would also say for your first film, make it for nothing. Make it for nothing if you can. Do not spend money. That would be one of my major things. Yeah. Do not spend money. Certainly money you don't really have.
Because the learning curve is so steep, yes. Right? I mean, I feel as though when you were on set, Mark, you know, it was you, your eyes were just like this. And this is somebody who'd made features before, right? But taking that big step up and working with such an amazing DP, Dan Story, you know. Yeah,
we went from being, you know, kind of underground filmmakers to much more, you know, professional filmmakers. And that was a big eye opener, because we had never had a professional level Hollywood crew, you know, which we brought up from LA to do that. And that was a real interesting experience, a great experience, really fantastic, but definitely different from the way we had made films before.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yanni.
Well, that was a pretty fantastic segue there, Joanne. That's exactly what I was going to ask about.
I didn't even plan it.
Well, it worked. So, Mark, I'm going to be working with Dante here on my feature, An Accidental Fire, soon. And I wanted to ask what your experience was like working with him.
Wow. What's the name of the feature? I wonder if he's told me about it. Which one is it?
An Accidental Fire.
Okay. I remember seeing that, I think, in his IMDb. Dante, the first thing I would say to Dante is an artist. He is an artist. He is not just, he is far from your workman-like director of photography. He is an artist. I would encourage you, if you can, let him design, let him do the work. At first, especially if you're like most of us, on a tight timeline and a tight budget, at first I'm like, man, he's taking a long time to light. You know, he's really taken some time here. But first of all, A, he wasn't. It just seemed like it from what I was used to, but he's not. And two, the payoffs are so worth it. He really is he paints with his camera. He really does. He's very no nonsense. He likes it when you're prepared. And he's pretty much an expert. And his crew is also superb. David Minadio, Eric Torme, Jeremy Guico. I mean, these are top of the line folks that he's got working with him. They are an absolute machine, and he's fantastic. You will have a superb experience.
Isn't that, Mark? Isn't that exciting? And you know how he met Dante? Because
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
he met Dante because he was chasing to get Amy Stolte in his film.
No, actually, no. I met. You were young. You met.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. So I I cast Amy, and I had no idea that Dante was her husband. No clue. And I had mentioned something to Joanne, and Joanne was like, "Amy Stolte, why do I know that name?" And I was
Amy's
like,
fantastic too. I know Amy very well. She is amazing. We want her for the Lustrud experiment, actually. For that, she is wonderful. And again, you will absolutely love what she does. She's phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean,
sorry, I was just going to say, I've told this story many times before. Yanni's heard it from me, but when Mark was shooting his film, I planned on going to visit set and just, saying hi and grabbing some craft services and leaving. And I was going to go for an hour. I drove down to San Jose. I was going to stay for an hour and drive back. I ended up staying like an entire day because watching the team work was such a pleasure.
And that was late. You were there until like 3 a.m, I think. Yeah. I mean, it was a late night. Yeah, that was late.
It was such a pleasure to watch Dante work with his crew and to see that team that has worked so often together. And they don't really need, I mean, Dante talks quite a lot, but they don't really need to talk. They just flow. It's fabulous.
You chose wisely, Yanni. Trust me, you chose wisely.
I mean, it was after I saw his work. I mean, because I went and looked at his reel, right? Because you're not going to hire a DP without looking at their stuff. So, speaking with Amy, speaking with Joanne, and then looking at his reel, and not just his reel and the work that he has behind him, but certain pictures that just kind of lined up with this one. And I was like, I got to talk to this guy. Talk to him. He read the script and he was like, yeah, I'm in. And I was like
by the next day or something.
Yeah. It was like 6 hours later. Like he read it and I was like, okay.
Yeah. That's Dante. That's Dante.
Fantastic.
So yeah, cool. All right. Thanks. I actually have to jump. I had to jump off like 8 minutes ago, so I'm kind of late. Thank you for the information today.
You're welcome.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye, guys.
Who else has a question?
I see there's a question from Maggie. Do you want me to answer that?
Was that a question?
Well, there's one in the chat here.
Maggie, did you actually have a question? I couldn't quite understand what you put in the chat. She may not be able to come on. Maggie, can you come?
Yes, hi.
Yes.
No, it wasn't really a question. It was just, I'm not the person who does anything too technical, but our director on our feature did. And so he tracked, for example, if we sent our film off to Austin, how many people around the Austin area watched our film and for how many minutes and that sort of thing. If we sent it to Tribeca, how many people in that area around the time of submissions or when it was up. Yeah. And a lot of them only watched it for a few minutes. And some film festivals, no names mentioned, did not watch it at all.
Okay, I want to address that actually. I'm glad you brought that up. I can't defend anybody when it says that they didn't watch it at all, but I have had this experience a couple times where I watched an entire film submission and I had a filmmaker get upset with me about that, saying, hey, you only watched 2 minutes. Absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. I watched the whole thing. Some of their analytics just aren't correct, pure and simple.
Wow.
Now you won't ever, now if it shows it never watched it, they didn't watch it. That is true. But I will say that, now I'm not saying it's right all the time maybe or whatever, but I have had that happen at least 2 or 3 times where it was a submission, or also we used to review independent films for Diamond Rough Films. They could just submit and we'd review their movie and publish a review. And of course I'd watch the entire thing, and filmmakers would complain that I didn't. And I said, no, I did. And they said, well, my analytics show that you didn't. And I said, well, it's wrong. That's all I can say. So they might have run into that. Again, I can't totally defend them, but from that end, I have had that happen.
Thank you. No, thank you for that.
Very interesting.
Mhm.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. I actually, I'm going to go to you, Mark Gordon, next. But I just wanted to go back to something Joe was asking. This issue of making something commercial versus making something personal. And not the way that you asked it in person, but the way that it's written in the chat, it's as if there's something opposite of what you call blatantly commercial versus deeply personal. And I think if you look at Crisis Hotline, you'll see a lot of deeply personal pieces. Mark's work has a very, very distinct flavor. He's super interested in all kinds. I'm always asking Mark about this. How come you're so deeply interested in science topics, technology topics, you know? And then the research that he did on Crisis Hotline, he very specifically did research on crisis centers and how they worked. And
that was interesting. Yeah.
And how the staff worked and all of this stuff. There's, I think, a complete difference between, making your personal film and making it for a market. I would not call that commercially, blatantly commercial. I think it's just, there's a market, let's get in there.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to be clear. We made Crisis Hotline to sell. I mean, that was the idea, and it did. I mean, so and that was another thing, Joanne, you were very helpful with, as far as guiding it in ways that it could fit into this kind of market. And in my opinion, they didn't exploit that market, the distributor. They decided to exploit a different market. Yes. So it was the film I wanted to make, but it was designed to sell. It was designed to be commercial.
Yes. Mark Gordon.
Hi, Mark. I'm Mark Gordon, and I'm working on my second feature film. And the first film, we entered in about a dozen film festivals and won some awards. And I'm just wondering, from your standpoint, also what you said about when, nobody wants to talk to you until you got your one film done. It's such a different ballpark starting working on the second film. But what's your experience with the film festivals? Are they of value? What would you recommend on a second film?
I would say it depends on what you want that second film to do. I've had previous work play in film festivals, of course, all over the place. I would say I don't think they're much value to a filmmaker overall. As far as indie films, I don't think so. I think most film festivals now are designed to push commercial product. I think it's okay it's good to get press for it. It's good to also I think where film festivals are good is to kind of test market your film. It's almost like a test market spot, because if you can get people interested in your film at these test film festivals, these film festivals, and if you get people to show up to see it that aren't your friends, that tells you if you've got something that could sell, I think. So if I was going to do the film festival route, and right now I would not for any of my work, probably that Diamond Rough Films produces, probably not. I don't think we'd spend much money doing that at all. If it was invited to do something, sure, we'll show up and do the panels and wave and whatever. but I wouldn't spend much money on it because it can get very expensive. And I think the return isn't worth the expense in general. But you can see it as an opportunity, like I said, to test your marketing skills. You know, can we market? It's a way to see, can I get people to show up in the theater to see it? And that could be an opportunity. But I don't think it's going to lead to any deals, or it's not going to happen that way, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's my experience.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, did you have your film in many festivals? Did it help with your PBS distribution, or were those completely separate?
Crisis Hotline didn't get into any. It got
No,
absolutely.
Mark Gordon.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Too many marks, sorry.
Too many marks.
So the relationship with PBS was formed very early in the project, and having a presenting station gave us credibility to raise the funds, because people would say, you know, that weren't familiar with, you know, funding a film would say, well, you're a filmmaker, why do you need money? Like, we all just come with $1 million. But when they said, oh, viewers like me, I get it, sure. Sorry. So yeah, that helped us raise the money for it and gave us credibility and gave us somewhere where to go. We did, like I said, about a dozen, maybe a little bit more film festivals, and you know, they led to other film festivals. And you know, I did get to meet Jamie Redford and get introduced to the Redford Center in a real positive way. So, you know, and I got to meet Jeff Bridges and, you know, things like that. It added some contacts, but I would be very selective in the future about what I would put it in, you know, and the other thing that I didn't know at the time, we had a what I would call a sneak preview here for 671 of our closest friends at this Performing Arts Center. But they advertised it as the world premiere, which made us not eligible for Sundance or anything. They just advertised it, and it was like, no.
Oh dear, oh dear. Well, it's we've come to the end of our time, so I just want to thank you, Mark, so much for giving us all your wisdom and information.
Well, thank you. And you can all contact me. I'm pretty easily findable. Joanne has all my information if you need it. You know, don't hesitate to email me directly. I'm happy to answer more questions. And if you want to see the film, you can see it on Amazon Prime or Tubi TV. Those are both, you know, pretty free services.
I put the Amazon link.
It's on Vudu, it's on Google Play, it's all of them. But
all
Tubi's
over.
an easy place because it doesn't, that you can watch it for free there.
Where?
On Tubi, Tubi.
Oh yeah.
There.
Yeah. Yeah, but thank you so much. And it's so good to hear about all the 3 projects that you're working on. And I think it's a great strategy to keep moving with the, you know, oh, Hollywood, we need the money, and keep moving on the other projects that you will be in control of.
Keeps it interesting for us. Keeps it interesting.
Yeah, awesome. So thanks everybody for coming from wherever in the world you all are. And next week, a very good friend of mine, Gianfranco, is going to be my guest. He literally today is completing the final look through, are we okay, good, on his first feature today that he's executive producing. He also has a career in data science in television, which is something that's very, very fascinating to me because, of course, we all, you know that Netflix doesn't share its numbers, but it's a data-driven company. And like Maggie was talking about, you know, when Mark, thank you so much for your answer about that, because, you know, I don't know if these film festivals are looking at the whole film or not, but Netflix knows to the second what you're doing when you watch.
Oh, yes, they do. Yes,
You
they
know,
do.
and
Yeah.
yes, so Gian comes from a background in data science, television, marketing, and those things. And he's also an independent producer. So he is next week. And then in 2 weeks, and I really hope that you will all go out and tell your friends, but a very dear friend of mine is going to be my guest. His name is Sergio Hiral, and he he says he's retired, but he is a world-class writer-director whose films are studied in universities all around the world. He is Cuban, and his films, when he was still in Cuba, which were supported by ICAIC, tell the history of Africans from the arrival in Cuba all the way up to 1959. When he got to the feature film that was set in 1959, the Cuban government turned the script down, and he defected to the States. So he's in his 80s. He's an extraordinary artist, and I really hope that you'll all join us for that. So. Thanks again, Mark. Thanks, everyone.
You are welcome. Thank you.
Bye, Diane. Bye, Dennis. Bye.